everybody. Welcome to the marketing panel with our wonderful SOM students here at Yale. My name is Stephanie Haffner, and I am the career coach here in the CDO called the Career Development Office. We are so happy to spend time with you today to help you learn about how to recruit in marketing at SOM and what that is involved, what's involved in all of it, and talk to our second years. But before we get started, just a quick housekeeping item is if you have any questions, please feel free to just submit them in the Q&A box at the bottom. And we have a colleague in the background. She's going to submit them to me. So whenever they pop through your mind, just go ahead and submit them, and we will get to them at the end as time allows. So without further ado, welcome again. And it's really my pleasure to speak with actually all three of you who I've worked with in the last couple of years, which I've had a really great time in doing and knowing each of you individually. I've got Matt Golden, Rad V, and Allan Wu. And if you could just do quick intros before we get started, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. I'll give kind of an overview of the CDO and how we work and the marketing industry overall. But Matt, if you could kick us off, and all of you, if you could tell us where you are from, where you went to undergrad, and what you did prior to SOM. So Matt, would you kick us off?
Perfect. Thanks, Stephanie. And thank you for including me on the panel today. Honestly, surprised and honored, both of those things. I am originally from New York. I studied mechanical engineering at Lehigh University. And prior to SOM, I spent just shy of a decade in the US Army. So huge pivot for me moving from military service to marketing.
Excellent. Rad?
Yes. Hi,
Sorry. Yeah,
everyone.
go ahead, Rad.
Yeah. I'm Radhika. I go by Rad, and I actually come from Vietnam. I grew up there, and I came to the US for college. I went to Colby College and double majored in economics and creative writing. And after graduating, I worked in an AI tech startup, and there I was doing marketing and operations. And I'm very excited to be joining SOM, pursuing marketing, which has worked out, and I'm excited to talk about it more.
Excellent. Thanks, Rad. What about you, Allan?
Hey everyone, my name's Allan. Super excited to be on the panel and talk about marketing as a whole for all of you. Just as a little intro, I am hailing from Jersey, although now I call Massachusetts my home. For undergrad, I went to MIT, and then afterwards, after studying finance there, I then pivoted into economic consulting at the Brattle Group.
Okay, great. All very, very different backgrounds. So it's interesting that you're all doing marketing now. And just to give those of you that are joining us today a little bit of an overview from the CDO and what we do, the Career Development Office, and how it's broken down. It's broken down essentially into two houses. One is employer partnerships team, and that team essentially curates and develops and hones relationships with employers that our students really want to work at. And on the other side of the house, which is the house that I'm in, is the career coaching team. So we work directly with students. We're industry agnostic. So if you decide that you want to come here to target marketing and decide to change into nonprofit or PE or whatever your heart desires, we will work with you throughout your time from first year through your second year to help you land a job. So that's a little bit about the CDO. And just for those of you, I think a lot of you were curious where SOMers land in the world of marketing. And so just to give you a couple of names in terms of employers that have been popular in the last year, in the consumer goods world, we've ended up with at Mattel, Unilever, and Diageo. In the tech world, at Microsoft, Amazon, and TikTok. And, the great thing about marketing is that it could land in any industry. And so healthcare is one of the more recent popular ones, and people have landed in Abbott and United Imaging Health. So that's just a couple to mention. There's a lot more, but just to give you a flavor of kind of the recent trends. So let's go back to our panelists, and I have a couple of questions. I'm going to go in order kind of our alphabetical names. So Matt, I'm going to start again with you. Could you tell us why you came to SOM?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, just for those that might be just joining, I was in the military for about a decade prior to coming to SOM. Of that military service, about 7 years was spent overseas. So a big piece for me was coming to be closer to home and friends and family in this area. So Yale is like an hour and 20 minutes from my family and a lot of my high school friends and college friends. So that alone was a huge determining factor, but also the sense of community when I came to visit was truly like overwhelming, and really sold me on this being a place where you can feel authentic about your connections with people that you make. So many people, even before I was here, were willing to help me in terms of navigating my career search or helping me even get admitted to SOM. You really, the sense of community was palpable. So that was very much so the two of the major deciding factors as to why I wanted to come to SOM.
Excellent. And Alan?
Yeah, I would say for me, coming from economic consulting previously, I knew that I wanted to make a pivot career-wise into looking more forward-looking in terms of strategic opportunities, and I felt that business school was the right opportunity, was the right vehicle for that change. I think for Yale specifically, to harp off of Matt's point of community, I didn't really know that was something that I would really come to love until I came to Yale for my revisit and interview day, where I just fell in love with the community, New Haven as a whole. And I think on top of all of that, the opportunities for curriculum to be a little bit outside of the box was something that I was excited for, in a new challenge, and to push myself outside of the Massachusetts area where I'd been for 8 years prior.
Cool. Thank you. And Rad?
Yes, so similar to Alan, for me, coming to campus was a big deciding factor. I had come for interview day, which was a phenomenal experience sitting in on the classes. But I think by the time that I had come for welcome weekend, I was still undecided. So I was debating between different programs, and I had gone to welcome weekends at other schools. And I think coming to Yale's welcome weekend, I had come in undecided, and by the end, I was looking for who my roommate was going to be. So over the course of that weekend, I met a lot of people who I really resonated with. I just was so inspired and energized by the thought of being in a classroom with them, becoming friends with them. And I think for me, as someone who double majored in creative writing and economics, I consider myself a creative at heart. And I kind of thought business school would be kind of like what it would be like to be in a creative in the econ department, feeling like a little bit of an outsider. And for me coming to Yale, I found that it felt like a whole group of people who are not exactly the business school stereotype of students. And I think that has a lot to do with the mission and business and society and how it self-selects for a certain type of person. And so I just found that everyone was very dynamic, very fascinating. And I didn't feel like an outsider at all. And so that weekend really cemented the decision for me to come to SOM.
That's awesome. Thank you for choosing us.
Yeah.
All right. Now, let's move on to internships. All of you did really interesting internships over the summer. And it's so fun to work with you to land those. We would love to hear, where did you land? Matt, I'll let you start, and kind of what maybe some of your projects were, and what are some of your goals post SOM as you leave the halls as a second year?
Yeah, so I wanted to do a complete 180 and move from the military to making toys. So I did exactly that. In this summer, I worked at Mattel, and I worked on the global brand team for Matchbox. For those of you not as familiar with die-cast cars, that's like the smaller version, or the smaller brand version of Hot Wheels. We had a multitude of projects that kept us very much so engaged. And some of them, we had individual projects. So for me, I had to essentially do a competitive landscape of the die-cast car competition and make recommendations to pretty senior leaders within the organization as to how we could differentiate our product, the products within Matchbox, to carve out a particular niche within that market. So that was one which was very dynamic and extremely interesting. You don't realize how much competition there is for things like die-cast cars. We also had a group project in which we were formed in different groups between like 8 and 10 people across all the MBA marketing intern, or not just marketing interns, but interns as a whole. So it was like a multifunctional team of marketers, people working in the finance department, people working in supply chain, and we were given a task of, again, kind of assessing a particular market for kidults. So people kind of like myself between like 18 and almost 40 years old that have this yearning for nostalgia, and we kind of had to make some recommendations as to how to infiltrate certain retailers and how to kind of capture more eyeballs. So on top of that, we just had a day-to-day set of tasks that I had to execute for the manager that I was reporting to. But all in all, it was a great experience. I was in El Segundo, California, out near LAX in Los Angeles. Really crazy, cool work environment, giant Hot Wheels tracks and loop-de-loops and life-size Barbie elevators. So again, a complete night and day from my military experience. But all in all, was really valuable, and a real huge breadth of exposure and experience, both in marketing and in the corporate world.
That's so fun that you get to be in the Barbie elevator and and have
Sure,
like those
sure,
Hot
sure.
Wheel tracks. It's so cool. Thank you, Matt. What about you, Alan? Very different experience in a completely different consumer product world. Tell us about your internship and what are you thinking post SOM?
Absolutely. Yeah. So for me, I this summer got to work within food and beverage space at Danone, which is Danone in North America, and so that's the yogurt big conglomerate. And what I did was got in my car, packed everything up, and drove out to Colorado, and started my internship out in Broomfield for those from the area. I worked specifically on the So Delicious brand, which is their coconut plant-based yogurt. And so my project really revolved around kind of a very big open-ended question of the the brand had been losing a little bit of steam and kind of has some catching up to do with a lot of the new players within the space. And so for me, there wasn't any defined do task A or task B. There was more so figure out what you think is the best way for us to win back share and to become kind of relevant again. And so for me, that involved a lot of market research, working with the analytics team for consumer insights, just to understand how consumers felt about the brand, um, what they wanted out of this type of kind of plant-based yogurt, and then how to chart a path moving forward. So for me, there was a little bit of getting to kind of pick my own path, which was really engaging, which ultimately came along to two paths, working with the R&D team within kind of food innovations to reformulate the yogurt to kind of make sure that we were reducing sugar almost by 50% and also giving it a more creamy texture. Then also launching potential ideas for new activations down the line. And that for me, just all the work that was involved in working alongside so many different teams, all the different stakeholders, and also kind of having the involvement of what's the ultimate P&L impact of the work that we're going to be doing was, I thought, a great way to kind of take so much of what I learned from SOM, both from our customer course, which is essentially an intro to marketing class, but then also some of the other dynamics of finance and whatnot, and kind of applied the classroom learnings into a internship setting. And I would say that was a really awesome experience for me. Moving forward, I am looking forward to hopefully diving into a similar role, but mostly within the world of sports.
Cool. And from both of you, from Matt and Alan, it's interesting because people, I think, mostly think that marketing is all creative, but you did a lot of like research, competitive landscaping, market research, working with R&D, working on market share. So it's just an interesting peek into really what a marketer does. Rad, tell us about your internship and what are some of your goals and how that's influenced your post-SOM goal.
Yes, so I was a brand manager at P&G, specifically in the Gillette and Venus office in Boston. And I think to your point, Stephanie, I think the brand manager role had the best of both worlds from what I wanted, coming from a creative and quantitative background, because you get to work on the creative, but also because as a brand manager, you do own the profit and losses portfolio. So you are responsible for the ROI or the success of all the initiatives that you propose. So basically, the summer internship that I was working on was tackling a business problem that the team had been struggling to untie this knot, essentially around the question of how do we increase market share among Gen Z consumer segment, because we're doing very well with millennials and above, but we're losing market share. So how do we do that? And the team had tried some different strategies, but essentially they wanted to bring in an MBA student who could do look at the data and look at all the things that the team had done and bring some fresh ideas, bring a fresh perspective to it. So in the first half of my internship, I worked on proposing a strategy. And if that strategy tracked after presenting it to senior management, and if it tracks with what they're seeing in the industry, then the second half would be creating a pilot program. What would it look like for this strategy to be implemented? And so in the first half, I really enjoyed doing the consumer interviews, analyzing the data, and essentially getting my fingers in the pie, learning as much as I could, working with others on the team to then formulate a strategy, present it, and I got the green light to then create a pilot program. And one of the things that I liked the most about the internship experiences, one of the highlights was there was a trip that we did to New York to visit the marketing agencies that P&G typically partners with. So we met with 3 different agencies, and essentially all the brand manager interns, what we're doing is learning and doing mock projects, but also essentially getting a taste of what are the differences between these 3 marketing agencies. And if we were to pick one to handle our advertising campaign or handle our creative campaign, who would we pick? Who would fit the most into our vision of what the campaign looks like? And it was really cool for me because some of these really awesome ad and creative marketing agencies were like my dream companies when I was in undergrad and recruiting. And now it just felt really cool to be on the client side, storyboarding with them and working with them, but a little bit more in a director role and telling them, no, I want this refined this way. So I really got to exercise my creative muscles, quantitative muscles. I had a really great experience, and I'm really excited to be returning. And I think full-time rolling out the plan that I have proposed.
Cool. At
Yeah.
P&G. So returning
At
back to
P&G,
P&G.
yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Tell us, I'm going to go back to you, Matt, about just in general, what career resources have been really helpful or the most helpful for you. I know you had a lot of conversations and you delved deep into the Yale network. Tell us a little bit about that and what was most helpful in your career search.
Yeah, so for the audience, Stephanie, who is hosting us today, was a huge resource for me from the CDO. For those of you that don't know, she quite a heavy hitter when it comes to consumer products and goods and marketing. So she was instrumental in kind of help changing me from this, more rigid military guy to somebody that the marketing industry would take seriously. So that was, again, the conversations I had with the CDO office were really outstanding. But frankly, kind of to tie back to what I said earlier during introductions, the sense of community at SOM is like really outstanding. And nobody has ever, or nor do I think that will turn you away if you ask for help. So I really reached out to a ton of people across the class who graduated last year, and even some peers that were in the marketing industry to kind of sit down and have coffee chats and pick their brain, which was really insightful for somebody that had not worked in the industry before. They kind of give you the on the ground truth as to what the experience was like, and kind of some insights as to what marketing employers or what brand managers do in actuality. So that was huge. But also the marketing club, which I think Allan is the leader of currently, was also tremendously helpful. So there were a lot of folks that actually had interned at Mattel and planned to return and are currently working there now, who were like instrumental in preparing me for the interview process. We did a lot of behavioral interview question preparation. They helped with like casing that was specific to the marketing industry, which really I think made me stand out when it came time to interview.
Cool. What about you, Allan? What were some of and thank you for the very nice compliments, Matt. What were some of the resources that were helpful for you in your process?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say first off, some of the programming from the different clubs on campus. So uh, I was a very big participant within the marketing club last year, and I got the chance to really soak up a lot of kind of institutional knowledge of kind of how to prepare for these interviews. And for me, that was really super helpful from going from a super quantitative background with a little less creative kind of background to developing that a little bit and opening up and getting myself ready for these interviews. I would also say the CDO, both Stephanie and helping to get me prepared, both getting my resume and also my own kind of behavioral answers kind of nailed down. But then also the CDO on the employer side helped to really get in a lot of employers on campus, which I thought the FaceTime really helped to develop really strong connections from, I think our biggest employers that come on are Mattel is one that started last year. Danone also started last year, but then we also have legacy connections with P&G and Pepsi. And so starting to develop those relationships early has been super helpful for me to dive into kind of what it's like culture-wise at these companies, how what they kind of expect and how I can kind of make myself stand out. And so that really helped me in my own process.
Excellent. Thanks, Alan. And what about you, Rad?
I think very similarly to the others, the CDO, Stephanie, you specifically, having you as a coach to check in every week, keep me sane during the very intense recruiting period was very helpful. The alumni network is phenomenal. And I would say the marketing club was also a very big resource. I think specifically the marketing curriculum that the club went through, and then the casing teams. I benefited so much from getting the reps in for marketing casing, and that was played an instrumental role in my interview success. And so that part of that is, I think, part of the reason I have signed up to be a marketing case team lead this year, working under Allan's guidance as the marketing club president. I think the help that we've gotten from the marketing team and the community really inspires us to give back to the club. And I think I'll talk on a fourth point, which, whereas I think the first three I mentioned helped me a lot in getting the internship. The fourth one is a class that I took with a professor, Tom Hafen. And that class I took after I'd gotten the internship offer, and it helped me in terms of success for the actual internship itself. So this class is taught by an industry powerhouse, Tom Hafen. He is currently director of marketing at Geico, but he has done, he's had a really phenomenal career marketing at Disney, at Goldman Sachs, at P&G, basically across different industries. And he really taught us the gold standard of marketing principles in that class. So when I joined the internship, I felt like I really hit the ground running. A lot of the frameworks that we had learned in class, I had gotten some really good reps in for that. So I would say these four pillars really helped me with my marketing career.
Fantastic. You guys had very different experiences, but all kind of similar in the same way. So it was super helpful. Those were all my, planned questions. I'm going to go ahead and go into the Q&A that was submitted to the folks that were here online, that submitted them in advance. Rad, I'm going to start with you. One of the questions that came in, because I'm going to tie this into another question that's asked in the Q&A, is because you talked about culture and
Yes.
how, you decided that SOM was the right fit for you. Aside from culture, why did you feel like SOM was the perfect fit for you in your career aspiration? And, at what stage, and I think it'd be helpful for you to talk about, at what stage did you decide to focus on marketing? Because you started somewhere else and then you ended
Yes.
up in marketing. So talk about that a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. So when I came to SOM, I was debating between
Are you back, Rad?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I thought I was frozen. Yes, I can now. Go
Okay,
right
sorry,
ahead.
sorry.
Maybe if you want to start
Yes,
over, that might be helpful. Can you hear me, Rad?
yes, sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe
Yeah,
if you could start over, that might be helpful
yeah,
because you kind of froze in the
absolutely.
middle. Yep.
Yeah. So I started recruiting unsure between three different paths. So I was considering between consulting specifically in CPG goods or marketing in tech or marketing in a CPG company. So I had known that I really enjoyed the creative and quantitative problem solving in marketing. I wasn't sure which lane I would resonate the most with. So over the course of pursuing these three different recruiting paths, I found that in the conversations that I had, in the casing teams that I was working on, and in the interview practices that I had, there would be traction and progress in one lane, which was marketing and CPG, and a level of satisfaction and excitement compared to the other. So I think one very useful thing that I took away from essentially speed dating three different industries at the same time is I got to see which ones left me energized afterwards. So after grueling marketing casing or tech casing or consulting casing, all three are very demanding, but which ones would spark ideas, make me feel energized and recharged afterwards? What kind of conversations would flow very naturally and dynamically? And I essentially found that while I could be a decent marketer in tech or a decent consultant in CPG, I really felt like I could be a very energized, dynamic, and self-actualized marketer in the CPG space. So for me, kind of navigating three paths in parallel, I found that, okay, I'm going to start eliminating some paths based on just seeing where the chemistry is not there. And then when I started to feel like I am not just feeling very energized, but also I am in some ways ahead of the pack in a certain lane, I'm going to invest all my energy there. And so I think for me, the recruiting process and the support and the momentum that I had expedited what otherwise might have taken, I think, 5 to 7 years of trial and error in the industry, trying different jobs, different roles. I got to do them all at once and find my tribe and then really hone in on where I would thrive.
That's excellent. I think it's really great when students do self-reflection on the energy piece, especially. And so interesting that you did all three routes and felt like that was the most energetic piece of your career. And so
Yeah.
glad it worked out for you. Allan, in a similar vein, and because you're also, the president of the marketing club, how common is it for students to pursue marketing and another industry? Because I know you looked at consulting too, internal, in parallel.
Yeah, I would say for me, I would think that it's very common. I think what drove me to business school was to learn a lot of different new perspectives. And as I started my own recruiting journey, I wanted to soak in as much as possible. That definitely loaded my plate early within my first year, but I was also similar to Rad, looking into learning about like tech casing and then also consulting casing, and then on top, kind of ultimately also doing marketing casing as well. So I think in that sense, you see quite a lot of individuals who come into SOM maybe not really knowing that marketing is a viable path. I think one of the common misconceptions is that it's just ad agency side and more the creative as opposed to what I really think it is a super cross-functional, almost like mini CEO where you do have, I think, more creative leeway than any other kind of career path that you might find at SOM, but that's not the dominant kind of responsibility that you kind of have as a marketer within these companies that recruit from the school. Um, and so I would say, yeah, it's very common. And so
Very
if
common.
you have a lot of different interests and marketing is one of them, I would say definitely go for it.
Great, excellent. Matt, can you talk a little bit about some of the ways that SOM has curated opportunities for you in marketing? How have you leveraged some of the career resources as you were kind of applying to internships and even looking for full time? How are you leveraging some of the resources here, specifically at SOM?
Yeah, I think Stephanie, one thing that really blew me away was the not just quantity, but quality of people, especially marketers that were showing up on campus very frequently. We had a handful of CMOs, chief marketing officers, that came to either address the class or address various clubs, which was truly outstanding. On top of that, we also had a lot of employer events would come and occur on campus at SOM specifically. So, like PepsiCo, for example, had an awesome, I mean, they're good marketers, so you'd hope so. Had an awesome event where they were obviously, trying to feel out the marketing scene and look for new potential interns. Where I think there was maybe like 10 to 15 alum that were part of their event across predominantly marketing and then some from the finance side of the house. But there was no shortage of expertise to kind of um, hear from across a multitude of avenues within the school. But those are kind of the real standouts that come to mind is like, wow, we had so many awesome, marketeers come chat with us. And yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty amazing who you get exposure
I
to.
mean, I was truly blown away. I'm like, wow, these are like multi-million, multi-billion-dollar companies, and these
Yeah.
these people are taking an hour, 2 hours of their time to come just, give us words of wisdom, which was again really insightful and kind of what Alan mentioned. When you are a marketer or a brand manager, or to Rad's point as well, when you have P&L ownership, you kind of are your own like mini CEO.
Yeah.
You're leading a very heavy cross-functional team of financiers and people that work in supply chain and operations. So you really kind of touch that hub and spoke model where you really do touch every aspect of
Yeah.
an industry.
That's certainly what I love about marketing is you get to be a mini CEO. I'm going to continue because I'm going to go through our live questions now. And Matt, I'm going to add on to my questions because I think it's particularly relevant to you and your background. Do you need prior marketing experience when attempting a year one internship recruiting circuit? And at what stage, because I know you came into my office saying, I love toys. I just want to work with toys.
Yeah.
At what stage did you know that you wanted to have a focus on marketing?
Yeah, so to the latter part of your question, at what stage I was very hyper focused out the gate, which was kind of both to my advantage and to my disadvantage because I had essentially blinders on it in terms of what I wanted to do. So for those of you that are aspiring to enter the world of marketing, don't hyper focus on something because it might close doors for other marketing opportunities that frankly could be a better fit. With regards to marketing experience, I assure you I had zero other than selling myself to go to school. Um, but it's funny. I talk about these visiting CMOs and all these other folks that came to chat with us, and I had the opportunity a couple times to have like a small lunch. They solicited, hey, like the first 10 students to reply can have lunch or something along those lines, and I had lunch with a couple of CMOs to which I asked that very question. Hey, I don't come from a marketing background. Am I at a disadvantage? And believe it or not, a lot of the responses were actually, I would look at that as a huge advantage because you bring a very unique and different perspective to the industry or to whatever product we're looking at that others might overlook because you are novel to this. And I think Alan also spoke to this too with regards to his summer internship experience as an intern at Mattel, very oftentimes people would ask for my opinion. I'm like, little old me, why do they want my opinion? But they wanted my opinion because it was so different and that I was new to not just the company, but the industry as a whole. So it allowed for a lot of creativity. So I think so long as you can market yourself and spin that, although you don't have a marketing background, you're still value add is huge kind of mindset to adopt.
Yeah, I'm not to mention you had this illustrious career in the military before, and you're a leader and your operations management, excellent. And so all of those transferable skills really, can move into marketing. It's just not in marketing, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. Big part
definitely.
of my MBA journey has been packaging my previous experience and marketing myself as somebody that can be just as good in another industry.
Exactly. Awesome. Okay. So the next question I have that's live here, and maybe an Allan or Rad, you could speak to it because you're talking about your customer class, and Rad, you were talking about AJ Wasserstein. Are there specific marketing courses or professors that have been impactful for you? And how does the curriculum stay at SOM stay adapted to industry changes? Either of you want to take that?
Yeah, I can definitely start with the marketing classes. So Tom Hafen's class is an iconic one. I think Jiwon Shin, who teaches the customer core class, he is such a dynamic marketing visionary, and he brings a lot of energy to the class. The types of cases that we learn in the core, I won't speak too much about this because I think essentially you learn marketing 101, but through the lens of someone who is deeply passionate about it. If you came in thinking that you are considering it, it's like one of the first classes that you take in the curriculum supercharges that passion. And so you go into the marketing recruiting fully energized and excited about that. I think not specifically, since I've talked about Tom Haven's class and how it gave me really robust marketing principles, I want to talk a little bit more about other classes that have, I think, rounded out my skill set a little bit more. AJ Wasserstein's class really, which is leading small and medium enterprises, really taught me how to think like a small CEO, pitch my ideas, hone my public speaking skills, not just to classmates, but to senior execs. So I think some of these other skill sets that you might not think are super core to a marketing specific career, I really enjoyed rounding out that skill set in AJ's class.
Okay, awesome. Allan, what other courses or professors have been helpful for you in preparing you for marketing roles? Are there other ones?
Yeah. I would say early on, there's one course that's part of the core that you take, I think your first 3 weeks on, you start right away at SOM. Nathan Novensky, I think he does a lot of psychology, and I think that helps to get you in a frame of really justifying an approach and just understanding the human psychology side of things that I don't think that gets enough credit in kind of the world of business. Um, I would say a lot of the similar names that we've already heard. But I would also kind of add on that there is a program at Yale, the YCCI, the Center for Consumer Insights, that does have a discovery project. And so that's essentially a supercharged um, project where you get 4 employers coming onto campus, and they'll have some basically like an internship problem that they want to get your perspective on, and they love your perspective. I think one of the ones that I saw this year, I'm not personally doing it, but I think for the next upcoming year, Pepsi is coming onto campus and saying, Garade's losing a little bit of steam within the market. How are we going to kind of revive that legacy brand and kind of kickstart our path forward? That's like an awesome opportunity working with some of these major companies such as Pepsi, I think MasterCard, the ladies LPGA. They all have some connection to Yale, and they're really excited to hear your own perspective. And so I would say on top of the classroom experience, you can also get some of the more practical kind of applied um, lessons from marketing within that program. And that's something where you apply for it and you kind of express your interest. And from there, you kind of get the direct exposure to some of these industry leaders.
Yeah, I absolutely think that the YCCI has been super valuable for every single student that has taken it. So highly recommend looking into it when you're here. Question I'll
I
just
also
open up.
just wanted
Yeah, go
to
ahead.
jump
Yeah,
in very
please.
quickly because this class came to mind. To the question of how classes have stayed relevant to industry trends, I took a class called Strategic Market Measurement, and it's a slightly more quant focused class. It looks at market sizing and how do you use tools to estimate size of the prize or demand for a potential product or service. And in this class, Professor Sudhir teaches it, and AI is encouraged for use in that. And actually, part of the class is learning how to use AI to help you in coding more effectively and efficiently. And essentially, we learn different softwares, but with AI as a partner in that process. And essentially, I have found that a lot of the classes, including a lot of the quant ones, they are sure to recognize the technology that is out there, recognize that companies are going to be using some proprietary version of their own AI, or employees are going to be using AI in some form. And essentially, how do we make that a part of the process ethically, efficiently, and also keeping in mind the central value proposition, which is what the human side and the human mind brings to it. So I have found that class really helped me think about the tech side of marketing.
Excellent. Thank you for adding that. Appreciate it. I'm going to open this up to the three of you, so anybody just feel free to pop in. How did you prepare for your interviews for both your summer internships and full-time? What resources does SOM provide?
I would say the one thing that I really leveraged initially was kind of the marketing club's curriculum, just learning about what kind of marketers are looking for in the interview and developing like a foundational understanding of the casing and good interview practices. But then from there, I would say a lot of the work really came with the collaboration of my classmates. So for example, Rad and I scheduled calls over the winter break before our interviews in I think late January, and so we would chat and then we would run through some example kind of cases and give each other feedback and do that, I think, once or twice a week for a few weeks on hand. And so that, I think the community, both the generosity of the second years to volunteer their own times who are not in the leadership of marketing club to volunteer their own time was incredibly helpful. And then the willingness to collaborate amongst our classmates was extremely helpful for getting me the reps that I needed to feel 100% going into interview day.
I'll jump in to add about
yeah.
the alumni specifically piece of my journey. So in addition to everything Allan mentioned, the casing teams, curriculum, CDO, I found that the SOM alumni network, because I think marketing in SOM is a small but very mighty, passionate group of people. The one key resource that I had that helped me, I think, with the P&G success was an SOM alum who was a marketing club leader. I had reached out to her, Jess Newman. I reached out to her just organically when I was looking through the previous marketing slide decks, came across her and was curious about her pivot in her career. And we just had a conversation, nothing about recruiting or P&G, just essentially about your career and what you found most rewarding in marketing. And a friendship just kind of organically took off, that by the time P&G recruiting came up, I had before that not necessarily considered P&G because as an international student, P&G doesn't offer sponsorship. But then later on down the line, my green card application kind of worked out. So a friendship that developed not out of necessarily a recruiting focus kind of presented this really great opportunity for when interviews came. She helped me work on my resume and get that application in very quickly. For interviews, she coached me one-on-one mock practice interviews and was such a ally throughout the whole process that ultimately I ended up getting not only placed in the same office as Jess Newman, but also on the same team as her. So she was working on a different project, but essentially, I think the friendship and the SOM vibes of seeing in each other, you are a problem solver and a team player that I know I would work well with, I think goes a very long way. And it really worked out in terms of my the start of my career at P&G, which I think in many ways started with Jess Newman.
That's fantastic. I love the power of the SOM network is very strong, very strong. Okay, we are ending our time, nearing our time at the end. So I'm going to ask our last question to each of you. And I'm going to start with Nat. Two things. Do you have any advice, and what is your advice for candidates who are applying currently to SOM? And what do you wish you would have known prior to applying?
Yeah, two very good questions. So in terms of advice, and it kind of goes off of what Rad was just talking about, leverage some type of mentorship. I was very fortunate. There are like formal military organizations that help veterans, seek admissions into whether it's undergrad or graduate programs that I applied to, and they paired me with a mentor, which was really outstanding. But on top of that, there was definitely a lot of more informal mentorship that occurred. Um, that was also really, really helpful in terms of posturing me to speak to SOM and get a better understanding for what the culture was like. So I reached out to a series of folks, both kind of from within my industry. I reached out to veterans that were either at SOM currently or had graduated SOM, and they were very excited to chat with me. Again, kind of speaking to the community that's bred at Yale. Um, and then I also reached out to a couple of people who were undergrad, who I went to undergrad, or we shared an undergrad institution that either also again graduated SM. There was even one person at the CDO office that is from my undergrad institution, Lehigh, that I connected with.
Yeah.
Rachel Ryan, who is
Yeah.
also, gave me some really sound advice, unbiased sound advice. But those, I'd say, having those connections and being vulnerable and being willing to almost like cold call or cold message people on LinkedIn or via email really pays dividends, and kind of humbling yourself, be like, hey, I'm looking to do this. I'd love to connect and get your insight. What would remind me again the second half of the questions though?
What do you wish you would have known before when applying?
Yeah, I think both my other counterparts here spoke to that. Taking an introspective look as to what you want to do and what excites you. I know, Rad, you really spoke to this, is kind of where you're energized. For me, it was both a combination of toys, but I'm very much so a people person. So knowing the kind of industries that I can play my strengths and leverage my operational and managerial like skills from the military, and something that excites me was going to really also again pay dividends in terms of the next steps for me. So really don't just like willy-nilly apply and say you want to go into a particular industry because um, whatever, superficial reason you think you want to get into that reason. Really kind of dig deep and get a greater understanding of self and what that industry looks like. And because it's tough to wake up every day and go to a job that you're not energized about.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice. And I echo, don't be afraid to ask. Ask people
Totally.
because you learn a
Huge,
lot and
huge,
people
huge,
are
huge.
happy to help. Allan, last words of advice. Advice for applying, and what do you wish you would have known?
Yeah. I'll keep it relatively short. I think there are some lessons that Matt has echoed that I really want to emphasize. When you apply, I think business school is this uh, amazing opportunity to pivot. Your goals and dreams that you want to achieve are not in any sense of the shape unrealistic. You should go reach for them. And in your application, be willing to kind of be vulnerable and talk about these dreams and how business school can help achieve these dreams. I think for me, for example, like I that kind of led me to Danone because I wanted to do work within like sports. But then kind of tangential to sports is health and wellness, and Danone really had a focus on bringing health through food. So that was like a natural extension that worked out for me. But when I applied, I talked about how maybe down the line I want to create my own like sports tracking like startup. That was an idea. I'm not 100% sure if like I knew what I was writing about or like if I had any kind of expertise within that space, but I was like, this could be a dream that I have, and I would love to do this. And I think SOM has a lot of tools that can help me um, for that. I would say the one thing that I would love to know is how much business school is really just drinking out of a fire hose. There's so much that's happening all the time. None of any of these items from academics to social um, engagements to kind of the career aspect of things to also you time. None of the things are hard on their own, but in balancing all four, it becomes a challenge. I would say finding enough time for yourself and having a real clarity of the direction you want to go and making sure that you give everything 100%, but then also being willing to take a step back and take a breath is really, really important um, for your own success.
Yeah, balance is really important. And I think to your earlier point, be bold, don't be afraid to pivot to what you want to do, and be vulnerable. It's okay. So great point, Allan. Rad, will you close us out and some advice?
Yes, I would say business school is a very big investment of time and also a big financial investment. I think I would have told myself to let go of the hyperfixation on what internship and what is the ROI, what is the straight path from starting business school to what job am I going to get? And I need this to be as straight of a path as possible. And the faster I can figure out what this looks like, the better off and more secure I feel. Because I think the detours and as I mentioned, speed dating of different industries, that is where I think I got a lot of the value of the MBA. And also I think the letting go of the hyperfixation on, okay, what job do I want to get out of this MBA? And that's going to be everything that I live and breathe as I'm thinking about the application and as I'm choosing schools. For me, over the course of this MBA program, and as I've listened to more alumni who have come back and shared their advice with me, the network and the people that you interact with are the things that age like fine wine over the years. And right now we are in this state of we need to make the most of this MBA career recruitment job. But actually, as I step back, I think letting go of that tunnel vision is what I would have warned myself about earlier on, because it caused me a lot of stress. And I was envious of people who might have had a earlier idea of, okay, I'm going to recruit for this industry, while I was still juggling three, and I was almost desperate to eliminate some paths before they communicated to me that, okay, actually this is the clear winner in terms of what I should be pursuing. So that's what I would tell myself.
Excellent. Really great bird's eye view. Well, thank you so much to the three of you for spending the last hour with me. It's been really a pleasure to work with you personally on your journeys too. And thank you to all of you online for joining us today. We hope to see you soon here at SOM, and have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Stephanie.